Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of the Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about geography and how it applies to your family history research. First, we'll talk about why it's important to understand and know the geography of the time and place where your ancestors lived, and then I'll share with you some of my favorite resources for uncovering maps, atlases, and gazetteers. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about why geography is important. One of the main reasons, and probably the most obvious one, is that understanding the geopolitical borders of the time and place where your ancestor lived is going to help you know where records might be located. Now, I have a family that lives in that little sliver of West Virginia that pops up between Ohio and Pennsylvania. They lived there for a lot of years, never moved, lived on the same piece of farmland as far as I can tell. But they lived during that time period in 3 different states and 4 different counties. They didn't move, but the boundaries changed around them. So whenever people say, well, where should I look for the records of my ancestors? Should I look for them in Virginia or West Virginia? The answer is yes. You should look in both places, but you have to understand that that existed in both places. Of course, some records are also held at county levels or local levels, so you don't just have to understand the geography of country borders or state borders. Sometimes you have to get down to very specific county borders, and sometimes even understanding when a city or town became incorporated or when it was founded, so that you know if they hold records as well. Another reason why geography is important is because land was a character in our ancestors' lives. As we're recreating family history information, we're not just putting down names on charts with dates and places. We're hopefully what we're doing is we're trying to understand the lives of our ancestors, and land played a critical role in that. It doesn't matter if your ancestor was a farmer or not. Now, if they were farmers, it's going to play a much larger role in their life, and a lot of our ancestors were farmers, as we were a much more agrarian society in days gone by. But even if they weren't farmers, if they, whatever other occupation they have, maybe they were in the military, maybe they were a country doctor who served a local community or 2 or 12, it doesn't matter what they did for a living, that land is going to have played a role in their lives and in the choices that they made. So understanding things like the distances between places is going to be important. That's one of the ways that we can make sure that we're tracing the right people, not just somebody with the same name and the same time. Those specific locations help to give us more information. Distances also help us understand things like why they married who they married, why different families may have migrated together, why they practiced a particular religion, right? All of these are reasons why distance between any given 2 locations starts to help flesh out or tell that family story a little bit better. The terrain is also a character in the story. Understanding, was there a river that ran near them that flooded, every spring and caused them to have to, do business in a town that maybe was a little bit further away than they might have the town just across the river, but they couldn't get across the river. Were there mountain ranges? Were there was there another county or another country in the way, right? Understanding the terrain and the topography of the land is going to help you understand things a little bit better. Also understanding their circumstances as far as it relates to weather, natural disasters, not just the river flooding, but one of the stories in my family has to do with the 1812 earthquake that hit in Kentucky. When that earthquake hit, it was in a place where earthquakes were not typical, and the people freaked out, and they thought that the land was failing them, and maybe some of them thought that God was angry with them. Certainly they didn't have a lot of them the information, the education to understand what that was all about. And so entire communities of people, including many of my family, picked up and moved. They just left, and it was because of an earthquake. And I discovered that a few years ago and was able to connect some of those dots. So understanding circumstances about natural disasters, about even just wars that were going on or conflicts. Conflicts don't have to be big wars either. There are things that happen such as well, not even just conflicts, illnesses. You have the influenza epidemic of 1918 that caused a lot of panic. A lot of people in big cities died. So you saw a little bit of a move back toward, people moving west and people trying to get out of the big cities. You see conflicts, back in the 16 and 1700s between the Native Americans and the settlers here in the United States before it became the United States. You see some similar things happen in other countries. And so getting to know the circumstances of the particular area as it relates to political issues, as it relates to conflicts, as it relates to illnesses, all of those are going to help you understand the time and place that your ancestor was living. Another thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about geography is to recognize that all levels of a location played a role. So a lot of times we tend to think globally because we live in a very global society, but our ancestors' lives, oftentimes their world was their community, their town, their church, the people that they worked with, and so you have to think on smaller levels as well. You need to understand what was going on in their country at the time, but maybe also bring it down to a state or a province level or to a county level and even to a local community level to understand what some of the conflicts are and what some of how the land plays a role in the lives of those people. So that's just some of the reasons why geography is important, why understanding or being able to pinpoint exactly where on a map your ancestor is from. Of course, the most obvious reason is because knowing exactly where they came from is going to help you get the records you need to continue to build your family tree. Those of us who have research in Ireland or Germany know it's not enough to know your ancestor was from Ireland or Germany. You have to know where in Ireland or where in Germany they were from in order to keep researching, because many times those records in countries like Ireland and Germany and Italy, they're kept on a very local level. And if you don't understand where they were from, it's very easy to either not be able to find anything or have so many people to research with the same name that you have no idea which one is yours. So geography is a big help in that. Okay, let's talk about some of my favorite map resources. One of my favorites, of course, is just Google Maps, and you can use whatever mapping system that you like or whatever search engine you like for your map system. I prefer Google Maps. My family comes from, my mom's family comes from Carroll County, Arkansas, and you can just type in that location into Google and then Google will map it out with the borders. They'll also give you some quick facts about the county as it stands now, where the county seat is, what the population is. You can see some of that information. But here are the boundaries of the county. And you can see, for example, the boundaries of the county are kind of screwy over here because they follow the border of a lake. Over here they follow the border of another lake, and so you get kind of these wonky borders, but understanding some of that is important. Now, my family lived in several places in Carroll County and in some of the neighboring counties, but predominantly they're in and around Green Forest. However, they tend to be up here a little bit to the northeast of Green Forest. And one of the things that I struggled with when I was first doing research on this family was the county seat's in Eureka Springs, the family is from Green Forest, but I kept finding the marriage records for them in Missouri. And it wasn't until I looked closely at a map that I realized that Blue Eye or Stone County, Missouri is just right here across the border. And as I zoomed into some of this and started pinpointing exact plats of land where my family owned land, one of the things I discovered is that they were right up here in some of these in some of this acreage that was just a lot closer and a lot faster to come up here to Blue Eye to get married than it was to go down to Green Forest or over to Eureka Springs to get married. So even though we think in terms of borders, oftentimes borders are just lines on a map. And in this case, it was at the closest town to where they were living was Blue Eye, Missouri, and so a lot of them were married there. Some of them even ended up living there. So I use maps for that purpose, for Google Maps. Another reason I use Google Maps, my family, another place they're from, before they came to Arkansas actually, is Hawkins County, Tennessee. And so one of the things that I love about Google Maps is you can kind of see on the map that there's some interesting topography happening here. But down here in the corner, you can click on this Earth view, and it will actually show you the mountain ridges and it's a satellite image. And so you can start to see, well, my family lived here, but maybe one of the reasons that they never interacted with people from this community, or maybe one of the reasons they always married girls from this community, is because it's right here through this valley. It's easier to get there than it was to go over the mountains or through, canyons or hollers. That's my family calls them hollers, into some of these smaller communities in order to get to people that way. So understanding, again, just the topography of the land helps you understand migration patterns. It also helps you understand simple things like, work, church, marriage, like the relationships that they have in their life and how those relationships develop because of the ease of particular routes over other routes. Okay, another resource that I love, specifically for U.S. research, is what's called mapofus.org. Now, it's a free website, and here's one of the reasons why I love this website. One of the things that we know about all genealogy research and all geography is that boundaries change over time. And so what this site has done is they've taken historical atlases and they've stitched them together. So I can come here to North Carolina, for example, and it will pull up a map of North Carolina and show it to me over time. So here is the interactive map of the North Carolina County formation history. So it starts in 1664, and in 1664 you'll notice that North Carolina had no western border. Most of the population center, of course, at that time, the only population, was in the east, but they didn't establish a western border for a while. And you'll notice there also aren't really county boundaries. It was just kind of like, this is this county and this is this county. And then you'll notice as you go through time that those boundaries will start to evolve. And so you can click your way through when your technology works appropriately. You can click your way through and see the boundaries change over time. My technology is struggling a little bit right now. It looks like I've got to flash something that's not working correctly. I could try another browser, but I don't want to take the time to do that right now. But you can click through to specific years, and it will show you the boundaries of that location during time. You can also come down here and you'll see you can click to learn more about the specific counties in the location. And one of the things that you'll learn from this is that sometimes there are counties that were organized and then formed from other counties, and sometimes entire counties were unorganized. You'll have a county, and then 3 new counties will be formed, and the old county will be entirely done away with. So understanding that sometimes happens. Sometimes boundaries shift back and forth over a period of years before they stabilize. So that is the mapofus.org. Again, you can do it by county. You do have to have the right Flash player installed, and it has to be up to date, which I should have tested, and mine's not. I apologize for that. But watching those boundaries shift over time is not only fascinating, because I am kind of a map nerd, but also really informative about where your ancestor may have lived or how things changed. It also helps you kind of see the progression of the population as they start to move west here in the United States. Now, another really great resource is Ancestry. Ancestry in the card catalog has an entire section on maps, atlases, and gazetteers. Now, these are typically databases that you're never going to find in a search because they are maps and atlases and gazetteers. They don't necessarily have someone's name attached to them. So if all you're ever doing on Ancestry is searching for a name, you're going to miss out on some of these great resources that are not name-based, but that are still just as valuable for family history research. So here's where you're going to find those. If you haven't used the Ancestry card catalog before, you just click on search and then go to card catalog. And once you get to the card catalog, over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see an option to filter by collection. And one of the category types or collection types is maps, atlases, and gazetteers. And you can see that Ancestry has 188 different maps, atlases, and gazetteers for different countries. One of my favorites is the U.S. Indexed County Land Ownership Maps from 1860. It's where you can actually see the specific piece of land that your ancestor owned in a given county in the United States. And you can see how that land changed hands over time. There are early land ownership and town platship maps that date all the way back to 1785. We've also got British Parish Register, an atlas of the different parishes in Great Britain, so that if you're doing research in specific parishes for births, marriages, and deaths, you know exactly where that parish is, and most of that stuff is most of the records are going to be recorded at a parish level. We have Irish Ordnance survey maps, tie the portion and allotment maps. We have the Myers Gazetteer and the Myers Orts for Germany. We have maps for Canada. We have maps for specific states. And you'll notice they're all for different time periods. So one of the things you can do once you filter down to maps is then filter by a specific country or continent, and then filter by a particular time period. Because you want a map, but you want a map that is specific to the time period when your ancestor lived there, because, again, those boundaries sometimes shift. So, again, these are in the Ancestry card catalog, and they're not going to show up in a traditional search because most of them are not name-based records. They're location-based only. And so you need to be able to go and browse to these records, and then when you pull one of them up, you can see here, you can actually do a search by a specific location, or you can just use this browse box over here. I can go to England, I can go to Lincolnshire, I can then be brought to the specific section in the atlas where the Lincolnshire maps are, and it will show me the different parishes in different periods of time for that specific location. So that is the Ancestry card catalog. The final resource that I want to share with you is actually Pinterest. Now, some of you might not have considered using Pinterest for family history research, but Ancestry has a Pinterest account. You can find it at pinterest.com/ancestrycom. We couldn't put another dot in there, so pinterest.com/ancestrycom is the Ancestry official Pinterest account. And what you'll notice is that we have Pinterest boards for all different locations. We have them for the US and the UK and Australia and Canada and Germany and Ireland. I mean, you can just keep going, right? But we also have an entire board called Great Maps. Now, I started this board several years ago, and there have been some additional things pinned to it over time. And basically what these are is these are some of the best maps that I've been able to find that show borders and migration patterns and information about, like this one here. This is the original homes of the Pilgrims in England before they came to the New World. And so you'll see the names of the Pilgrims and where in England they lived. Stuff like that is fascinating to me. Another one of my favorite maps here has to do with how the borders of Poland have changed over time. Now, my family is from Pomerania, which was part of Prussia, and then it was part of Germany, and then it was part of Poland. And so understanding, again, some of those boundary changes helps me know where to look for records, helps me understand politically a little bit about why my family chose to leave that particular region. Here is a map of America before the Revolution. We've got maps of just all sorts of things. So I just think I love maps. I'm a total map nerd, but maps help me start to get into the headspace or into the visualization of what my ancestors were dealing with geopolitically as they made the choices that they needed to make in their lives. But my favorite map on here, if I can scroll down here, is actually a map of Native American tribes. So one of the things that we hear a lot is, my ancestors, I have ancestors who are Native American. And interestingly enough, a lot of people try to automatically attach themselves to the Cherokee. The Cherokee were certainly a large tribe. They were a tribe who was most intermixed with Europeans for the longest period of time. And so there is probably quite a few of us who have Native American ancestry. But Cherokee certainly were not the only tribe. Here in the United States alone, so not counting Canadian natives or Central and South American natives, here in the United States alone there are more than 500 federally recognized tribes. And so you'll start to see here where some of the different tribes have lived throughout time. And that will help you understand if your family is from Maine, chances are you don't have any Cherokee, but you could have a Micmac or Iroquois or Algonquin. You can start to see some of those other places or other tribes that are possible. There's a couple of Native American tribe maps that I've pinned here, just some great information. Start spending some time with maps, play around with them, come to understand them, look for maps that were created both at the time your ancestor lived there or created later to reflect the time your ancestor lived there, because the boundaries at the time are going to be really important to your research. But also think outside of boundaries. Think about terrain, topography, think about natural disasters and circumstances that may have affected their lives, and go digging into maps that will help reflect that. And then maybe share some of those maps or attach some of those maps in your tree to the people who they apply to. One of the things you can do is you can upload a single image on Ancestry, and then you can attach it to multiple people. So if I have a map, for example, of Pomerania, I can attach it to all 4 of my great-great-grandparents who were from there, and still just upload the one image. Lots of great things you can do with maps. Hopefully you will do some exploring, and if you want, go ahead and leave a comment here on YouTube. Let me know what map resources you're using and how you are using them. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.